the school and I don't want to leave it. So to stay there I could stay there, but I would need some help to do that.
Yeah. Well, the good news is that you're in the right place to try and stay there. And what I want to try and do, and what we're going to put in your action plan, is to empower you, Janie, so you feel more confident asking for support, because you are definitely within your rights to ask for support from an employer. Every employer has a duty of care to look after your mental health needs and ensure that you have the facilities to perform as best you can.
Okay.
So, like it's mentioned earlier, perhaps if we had that informal meeting, that would be something to suggest there as well. It sounds like the school means a lot to you. Is there any other sort of things that motivate you to stay in that specific employment?
Well, it's an area that I know. It's an area that I'm qualified to do. And I like it. I like the school.
And you've mentioned to me that you're having a few sort of frayed conversations with your other half because of the financial pressures. Would you say at the moment that is preventing you from looking for work? Or changing jobs, or being confident and happy?
I'm just not confident about changing a job right now.
And that's because of the history of what's happened in this environment.
Yeah, and also I would have to get to know different people again, different boss again, and my experience with my current boss has actually not made that very palatable for me.
Quite a difficult relationship, hard to talk to?
Well, I just don't think they understand
much
about mental health.
So perhaps we do actually offer free workshops as part of our employment advice in wellbeing, so perhaps it could be something, if we do have an informal meeting, to perhaps just bring in a flyer and sort of subtly recommend to them, because it's not necessarily anyone's fault when they don't have an understanding about mental health, but it's something that you definitely need to have in this day and age to support people. That's not you doing anything wrong, that's just somebody else perhaps not having that understanding. Quite often we have that understanding, unfortunately, from lived experience. So when you've come through this and you're at the other end, you'll have the upper hand, because you'll be able to help other people that are going through what you're going through now, because you've got that understanding. Just going back to looking for work, I know you've got children at the moment. Your childcare commitments, does that impact on looking for work?
It does. So I have all the school holidays free, apart from a few days where we have what we call baker days, where we have to go in. So childcare at the moment is on the same level as the schools. I'd like to keep it that way.
Yeah. So would it be a problem for you to give up any commitments in order to study or work or change hours? That answer is yes, it would, wouldn't it? It needs to fit in around what you've already got at the moment.
Yeah.
Anything else in terms of commitments, or?
No, I think that's the biggest commitment, really.
Okay.
Don't think I can't think of anything bigger than needing to find childcare for the children when I've not had to do that in the past, and that might put more of a strain on me and Danny, actually.
Yeah. And we do when you're talking about strain, it might be something that you want to consider, is that we work very closely with a partnership service called Relate that help with sort of relationships they're on a scale as everything else. They're going to go through turbulent times, and just to give you a bit of support with that. So perhaps when you look up Snap, you might also want to look up Relate, because they may be able to help you and Danny through a bit of a hard time.
And did you say Relate are part of your service?
Then they're a partnership service of wellbeing. So yeah, they're one of our partners, because obviously at the moment, if you're stressed at home, that is going to take a toll on how you feel, and it's going to influence your behaviour. You're going to feel a bit more snappy, and you're going to feel like you don't have the confidence to go back, because if the support around you isn't as strong and as beneficial as it could be, it's going to influence you to make you feel worse.
Okay, that makes sense.
Strengthening those relationships will be a real positive in hopefully getting you back to work. So before we move on to your action plan, what is your main goal regarding work? What are your hopes regarding work? Where would you like to be in a month?
I would like to be able to go to school without worrying, go to work without worrying about having a panic attack without fainting.
Mhm.
Maybe have improved understanding of my mental health with my employer and my colleagues.
Okay. So, long-term improved understanding of mental health and eventually return back and hopefully go on to teaching assistants.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What's your short-term goal? Where do you hope you'll be this time next week?
Not worrying. A bit more self-confidence.
Mhm. And your median, where would you want to be in a month?
Not arguing with Dunny over money.
Fab. The reason why I ask these is this is going to help formulate your action plan, and it will help clarify, your expectations of me and the work we achieve together. It will give us something to measure that by. So every session we are going to summarise and define what's going on, and to do that we're just going to do what's called a problem summary.
Right.
I know problem summary doesn't sound that positive, but we're going to make it into something positive. So we need to consider the problem. So my main work-related problem, I understand it to be the fear of fainting on children. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
And that has been caused by your experience of fainting, isn't it?
Yeah.
The impact is obviously now that you are off work. Impact perhaps with frayed relationships and lowering self-esteem.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any other impact you feel it's had on you?
Well, it's kind of knocked my confidence a bit. I start to question whether I'm capable. I guess that's tied in with low self-esteem, but...
Does that mean perhaps you're a barrier to achieve your own goals because of your own self-doubt, do you think?
Possibly, yes.
Mm-hmm. Your main employment goal?
To be able to be employed and work safely and to work well.
And where would that be? Teaching assistant?
Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything else that we haven't discussed today that you want to add on before we formulate your action plan?
No. I think we've covered most of it.
Okay. Thank you. I know that can be a bit intense, especially the first session, can't it? So, options for next appropriate step. Now, I think for you, Janie, first and foremost would actually be to arrange that informal meeting with your employer.
Okay.
Just like I say, if they don't know the extent of how you're feeling, they may have other ideas and suggestions how to best support you in your current place of employment.
Okay.
Okay, so I think perhaps arranging a formal meeting, obviously I will need both your and their consent for me to attend that with you.
Yeah.
And it can just be kind of a chat with me then. Hopefully that will start to work towards your long-term goal of educating your employer about mental health in the workplace. So that's a positive. And I think also regarding further training, we need to, first of all, I will have a look at your CV and send that back to you if I make a few amendments.
Okay.
And we can do perhaps a training search together to see what available training there is to get you towards that teaching assistance role.
Okay. Yeah.
Does that sound good?
Yeah.
You look a bit hesitant, Jamie.
Well, is this going to lead to applying for new roles? And completing forms, because I'm right now. I don't need to sort of I don't want to think about, like application forms and CVs and things. I don't want to think about that because that to me makes me feel like I'm thinking about moving on.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe in the future, if then I do decide to do teaching assistant training.
Yeah.
Maybe that's something we can look at then.
We'll take it in small, slow steps and it's at your pace. So although progress it needs to be made as an inevitable part of the employment service,
Right.
we'll take it at your pace. So I think first and foremost, let's concentrate on getting you back to work where you are currently, having that conversation with your employer and seeing if there's anything they can put in place to support you in that.
Okay.
And then once you're back in work and hopefully feeling a bit more confident and happy, if teaching assistants is still something that you would like to look into, we can take it from there. But I would like to do your CV at the first appointment, just to have that done. And I use the CV as a tool to empower you. Quite often when we're feeling anxious or depressed, it's the worst time to try and write a CV because you're selling yourself. It's what's good about yourself.
Okay.
If I can have a look at that document and maybe tweak it around a little bit, it will hopefully remind you that you are employable. And I'd like to do that in the first session so you're empowered from the get-go, if that's okay.
Okay, yeah, I understand.
Okay, so goals agreed. Getting back into work, isn't it?
Yeah.
Would you like to be back to work? I know we mentioned 6 months earlier. Is that still realistic for you as a long-term goal, 6 months' time?
Yeah, I think it is.
Okay. A short-term goal, and I think that is crucial, is setting up that meeting with your employer. Quite a big, I know you say, that your short-term goal is to increase your confidence. I think it would increase your confidence if you knew that you were able to go back into work and it didn't break you. You could hold your head up high. So perhaps a short-term goal could be arranging that informal meeting and attending it.
Okay, yeah.
When you think of a medium-term goal, going back to what you said earlier with your relationship with Danny, are you happy if I put here medium-term to perhaps just investigate both SNAP and Relate to see if they can help you?
Yeah, that could.
In a month's time?
Could we make it 6 weeks?
Yeah, no problem. Okay, so if you could for me please, just write your written consent for me to contact your employer
Okay.
before you leave today, and then I can hopefully contact them to arrange that informal meeting. That will help us working towards a short-term goal. All right?
Yeah.
Hopefully that can happen within the next 2 weeks or so, and I can support you through that. So that is what I'll do for you, and that's going to be our first priority.
Okay.
And obviously what needs to go on the system today is, you did mention to me your suicidal thoughts. That'll be the first thing I do after this appointment. We'll be putting that on the patient management system. All right, and as I've said, if you feel those thoughts reoccur, please make sure you contact your GP or the Samaritans.
Yeah.
I'll have a close chat with Gemma and we'll talk about those feelings of fainting in work and seeing if we can work collaboratively with easing those feelings, because it might be that actually going back into the nursery for that informal meeting, it might bring back those feelings, it might not. The children may not be there if we go there at 6 p.m. for that meeting, so it'll be interesting to see if you still feel like that. So things like that I'll work with Gemma. I'll give you the information for Relate and SNAP, the referral systems to them, our partnership service, so that in around 6 weeks you can contact them, and hopefully that will improve your relationship with Danny and have a positive influence on you, which will help increase your confidence. And then gradually, combination of this, hopefully long term, 6 months time, we can look at getting you back into work. And after you've been there to say a few months, if teaching assistant is still something you would like to find out more about, we can do a search together about possible courses for that.
Okay.
All right, so would it be all right with you, Jamie? What's your availability like next week?
Well, I've got, yeah, that would be fine. The children are still at school, so this same sort of time, or?
Yeah, if we were to say 3 p.m. next Thursday,
Yeah.
is that all right? I'm just looking on my calendar, that's when I've got 3.
Unfortunately, I'm picking the children up at that time.
1 p.m?
1 p.m. would be fabulous, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. And you've put on here your preferred method of contact is email, is that still correct?
I'd rather that. I get a bit jumpy. I always think there's somebody calling about the children when it's the phone.
That's no problem. I've got your email and I've also got your consent to text as well, so if ever I can't get hold of you on email, is that okay?
That's fine, yeah.
Alright, so I'm seeing you next Thursday at 1 p.m. I'll have a chat with Gemma and we will go from there, if that sounds alright with you.
But when do I have to give you my CV?
If you could send that over to me as soon as possible, you've got my email address, and then hopefully I could have a look before I see you before next Thursday.
Okay.
Alright?
Yep.
We can look through it together then.
Okay, thank you.
Fab. Thank you very much, Jamie.